Hello everyone, welcome back to the Strike Point Media channel. Please subscribe and like my videos. Today's story is about one of the most dramatic and costly defeats in modern military history, the moment when Russia's $1.1 billion tank army, an armored giant meant to crush Ukraine's defenses, rolled into what became a perfectly designed kill zone. It was supposed to be a show of unstoppable force, a demonstration of military dominance, but instead it turned into a fiery graveyard of steel, shattered confidence, and burning wreckage that shocked the entire world. Picture the scene: endless lines of Russian tanks stretching across open terrain, their heavy engines growling, the ground vibrating under the weight of armored columns. Dust clouds rose in the distance as these metal beasts advanced, their cannons gleaming under the cold morning light. To anyone watching, the sheer number and size of this force would have seemed overwhelming, a tidal wave of steel that could flatten anything in its path. The Russian military had invested billions of dollars into building and maintaining this armored fist, believing it to be the backbone of its battlefield power. But as history has shown, strength on the outside does not guarantee victory when vulnerabilities lie hidden within. From the outside, Russia's tanks looked menacing. Their exteriors were thick with reactive armor plates designed to absorb impacts. They bristled with heavy cannons capable of firing armor, piercing rounds at long distances, secondary machine guns mounted on turrets, and smoke grenade launchers to obscure them from view. Painted in camouflage patterns, they blended into the landscape, looking ready to strike terror into their enemies. But war is not just about appearances. The steel exterior was supposed to make these tanks invincible, but against the combination of modern weaponry, superior intelligence, and carefully prepared ambushes, that armor became just another target waiting to be penetrated. Inside, the story was very different. The interior of a Russian tank is small, cramped, and suffocating. 3 men, the driver, the gunner, and the commander, sit shoulder to shoulder, surrounded on all sides by steel walls and live ammunition. The air inside is thick with the smell of fuel, lubricants, and gunpowder residue. It is hot, claustrophobic, and offers no room to breathe. Unlike Western tanks such as the American Abrams or the German Leopard, Russian tanks sacrifice crew safety for compact design. Ammunition is stored all around the interior chamber, in racks just inches from where the men sit. This makes the tank lighter and smaller, but it also creates a fatal weakness. One well-placed strike and the entire interior becomes a furnace. The shells ignite and the turret blasts off like a jack-in, the box killing the crew instantly. This interior flaw was not just a minor design issue. It was the very reason why so many Russian tanks met explosive ends in Ukraine's kill zones. Performance-wise, these tanks were supposed to be fast and deadly. On the proving grounds back in Russia, they could hit high speeds across rough terrain, fire accurately at targets kilometers away, and crush obstacles under their tracks. In parades on Red Square, they looked flawless, symbols of national pride. But real war is not a parade, and performance in controlled conditions is very different from performance in hostile territory. Once Russia's armored convoys rolled into Ukrainian ambush zones, their mobility turned against them. Narrow roads, open fields, and predictable movement patterns made them easy to track. Ukrainian defenders used drones to monitor every move, artillery to rain destruction from afar, and anti-tank guided missiles to strike from concealed positions. What should have been swift, powerful, and overwhelming movement instead became slow, predictable, and exposed. Tanks that once seemed like unstoppable predators now looked like prey being hunted from every angle. Safety was another illusion. On paper, Russian tanks had basic protection systems. Their armor was meant to shield crews from shrapnel, their reactive plates were supposed to disrupt incoming warheads, and smoke launchers could mask their positions. But these safety measures crumbled under modern warfare. Drones hovering silently above could guide missiles with pinpoint precision. Artillery strikes could land directly onto convoys, and advanced anti-tank weapons sliced through armor as if it were paper. Inside the tanks, the lack of proper fire suppression systems meant that once a shell hit, flames spread rapidly. Unlike Western tanks, which use blow-out panels to vent explosions away from the crew, Russian tanks turned into steel coffins. Videos of destroyed tanks littered the internet, showing turrets blasted off and wrecks still burning long after the crews were gone. For the soldiers inside, there was almost no chance of survival. What truly made the difference was not the tanks themselves, but the unique selling point of Ukraine's defense. The Ukrainians knew they could not outmatch Russia in sheer numbers of tanks, artillery, or manpower. But they had intelligence, agility, and determination. They turned their disadvantage into strength by using terrain to funnel Russian convoys into narrow roads where movement was restricted. They planted ambushes in forests, villages, and open fields. They used Western, supplied weapons like the American Javelin and the British N-Law, along with their own Stugner P missile systems to strike tanks from hidden positions, and above it all, they deployed cheap but highly effective drones to provide real-time intelligence. These drones, costing only a fraction of a single missile, spotted convoys, tracked targets, and sometimes carried explosives themselves. Against tanks worth millions of dollars each, these small, affordable tools completely changed the balance of power. The price of Russia's mistake was staggering. Analysts estimate that in just a few weeks, tanks and armored vehicles worth over $1.1 billion were destroyed, abandoned, or captured. Imagine that, billions of dollars of military hardware reduced to smoldering wrecks littering the Ukrainian countryside. Each destroyed tank was not just a financial loss, but also a blow to Russia's reputation. The world had long been told that Russia's armored forces were second to none, that they could dominate any battlefield, but now the myth was shattered. Images of burned-out tanks spread worldwide, showing that expensive machines could be neutralized by smarter tactics and cheaper weapons. For the crews inside those tanks, the cost was even greater. Young soldiers, many of them conscripts, sat inside their machines believing they were protected by steel, only to discover that they were sitting inside death traps. Survivors spoke of the terror of seeing comrades destroyed in seconds, of watching turrets blast into the air, of hearing the screams over the radio as convoys were hit one after another. The psychological toll was immense. Tanks that were once seen as symbols of safety and power became symbols of vulnerability and death. The destruction of Russia's tank army was not just about hardware. It was about strategy, willpower, and the reality of modern warfare. Ukraine proved that you do not need the biggest army to win battles. You need intelligence, adaptability, and the will to fight for survival. By turning Russian strength into weakness, by exploiting design flaws and using modern technology, Ukraine showed the world that even $1 billion armored force could be brought to its knees, and this is where the lesson lies. The exterior may look intimidating, the interior may feel powerful, the performance may seem impressive, and the price tag may suggest invincibility, but all of that can crumble when the design is outdated, when safety is compromised, and when strategy is lacking. Russia's $1 billion tank army entered a kill zone believing it could not be stopped. What happened instead was one of the most dramatic reminders in history that war is not won by appearances or price tags. War is won by preparation, intelligence, and determination. Ukraine's defenders, armed with far less in terms of hardware, obliterated a force worth more than $1 billion, rewriting the rules of modern warfare. As the smoke cleared and the fires died down, the battlefield was littered with burned-out shells of what were once mighty machines. Towers of black smoke rose into the sky, visible for miles. For Ukraine, it was a moment of triumph, a validation of their courage and strategy. For Russia, it was a humiliation, a reminder that even the most powerful looking weapons are only as strong as the strategy behind them, and for the rest of the world, it was a lesson in how the future of warfare may not belong to the biggest machines, but to the smartest fighters. This is the story of how Russia's $1.1 billion tank army entered a kill zone and was obliterated. A story not just of destroyed machines, but of shattered myths, broken pride, and the unshakable will of a nation fighting for survival. And as the war continues, one thing is clear. Steel can burn, tanks can be destroyed, but courage, strategy, and determination are harder to defeat.